I am very honored to be here. I know I'm not actually here, there, but I'm grateful that when I told Andreas that I couldn't make it in person, that he was able to make allowance for me to take part remotely. So I'm grateful to be here in the form that I am. Now, I know you've probably taken in a great deal of teaching just over the course of this morning, let alone since the conference started. And it's getting close to lunchtime here, so you're probably a little bit hungry. I'm also aware that I'll be saying some things that are a little different than you may have heard about A Course in Miracles before now. But if you can stay with me, I hope you'll come away with some helpful ideas about how to join. When Andreas asked me to choose a topic, I asked him to clarify the title for me. The full title, of course, is Remembering the Kingdom. Are we ready for true joining? And he said, I see those two lines as going hand in hand. Yes, it is about the kingdom and remembering it because we join as brothers in spirit. With joining, I mean joining minds, listening to his voice, and remembering what he promised. What I was hearing in that was an emphasis on that second part. Are we ready for true joining? Which is a great question. My main experience of human beings is that the answer is not yet. Anyway, based on all that, I chose the topic, how do we join? And in a little bit, I'm going to offer two things. I'm going to try to keep it very simple here that can help us join. I am very happy to be presenting on this topic because, in my experience, joining is a neglected topic among course students. I've been in the course community for over 40 years now. And I think we're very adept at finding cool metaphysical ways to reinterpret joining as something that's not really joining, not really interpersonal joining. We say, well, we join with Jesus, or we say, well, bodies can't join, which is, I think, often taken to mean that individuals can't join. Or we say we're already joined, or there's only one of us here. We say the holy relationship only takes one. But what I want to say at the start here, let me go ahead. I've got some slides to share. Can I share my slides, Andreas? Let's see.
Yes, you should be able to share.
Okay, great. Hang on 1 second here. Okay. Hopefully, looks like you all see that. So, how do we join? First thing I want to say is that the course is talking about actual joining between two people. This is very clear in the course itself. Just a few quotes here to back that up. The first one says, when two minds join as one and share a single idea equally, the first link in the awareness of the sonship as one has been made. Next one says, but when two or more join together in searching for truth, the ego can no longer defend its lack of content. And finally, you have gone past fear, for no two minds can join in the desire for love without love's joining them. So the Course is talking about two people, or in one of those quotes, two or more joining. And you see this in the course's discussions of the holy relationship. When it talks about the holy relationship, it is talking about two people joining in a common goal or common purpose, which invites the Holy Spirit into the relationship. And the Course says this much many times. But even if we miss it, in each of the major places where the Course talks about holy relationships, there is a concrete example that the Course has in mind, a concrete example of two individuals joining. So I want to go through some of the places where the Course, well, the three main places where the Course talks about holy relationships. The first is in the text, talks about holy relationships in the text from chapter 17 all the way to the end of chapter 22. That's 6 chapters. Okay. And throughout those 6 chapters, the Course has in mind Helen and Bill's relationship. It's talking directly to their relationship. Okay. And consistently talking about the holy relationship as a joining between two people, because it's talking about those two people. Here's a quote: a relationship undertaken by two individuals for their unholy purposes suddenly has holiness for its goal. As these two contemplate their relationship from the point of view of this new purpose, they are inevitably appalled. Now, it's a lot in that quote we could talk about, but what I want to talk about or point out is just that there's two people who have suddenly embraced this new goal, and now they're contemplating their relationship from the standpoint of that new goal, and they're appalled. Okay, the next place where holy relationships are discussed is in the Manual for Teachers. The number of sections that talk about the holy relationship between a teacher and a pupil. And here's just one quote that shows you what I mean. When pupil and teacher come together, a teaching learning situation begins. God's teacher, the Holy Spirit, speaks to any two, there's two again, any two who join for learning purposes, join in the purpose of learning. The relationship is holy because of that purpose. So throughout the manual's discussions of this topic, it's clearly talking about two people, a pupil and a teacher, and they have joined together in the purpose or the goal of learning. Then finally, the last place where the Course talks about holy relationships is in the psychotherapy supplement. And there again, we have a concrete example of a holy relationship. Here is the relationship between therapist and patient. And so again, there's no mystery that we're talking about joining between two people. Here is the quote I have. This, however, needs the help of a very advanced therapist capable of joining with the patient in a holy relationship in which all sense of separation finally is overcome. So we know as students of the Course that Helen and Bill joined together in search of a better way. And that as a result of that, they then joined together as co-scribes of A Course in Miracles to, to give the Course birth into this world. So we know they had an actual joining between two people. Do we think that's some kind of anomaly that it doesn't apply to us? It's not an anomaly in the Course. Their joining was a prototype for how we are meant to walk this path. At the heart of this path is actual joining with others. So, why is joining so important in the Course? The reason is that joining is how we discover that we're not separate, that we are not an ego. It's a really important passage in the psychotherapy supplement. I want to read it to you and just talk about it for a little bit. It says, what must the teacher do to ensure learning? What must the therapist do to bring healing about. Only one thing, the same requirement salvation asks of everyone. So, this is the requirement salvation asks of everyone. Each one must share one goal with someone else, and in so doing, lose all sense of separate interests. Only by doing this is it possible to transcend the narrow boundaries the ego would impose upon the self. The logic in this paragraph makes perfect sense. It goes something like this. If you truly share a goal with someone, you will then lose all sense of separate interests. Separate interests are the idea that I can lose while you gain, or you can lose while I gain. Interest here has to do with the idea of gain. So when you lose all sense of separate interests, you have this sense that you gain together or you lose together. And if you really have that sense with someone, I think that's very unusual for us to have that, especially to lose all sense of separate interests. If you really feel that with someone, a feeling of oneness comes along with that. And if you feel at one, then it's like you are no longer shut up inside the narrow boundaries the ego would impose upon the self. So, through joining with someone, you realize you are not imprisoned inside the separateness that the ego would impose on you. You're not just you. You realize, oh, I am that person as well. We're one. Now, Andreas said to me that we remember the kingdom because we join as brothers in the spirit. And that is essentially what this quote and other similar quotes in the Course say, that we remember the kingdom by joining with others. In fact, the Course says that joining is the Course's special method for speeding us home. If you were to pick what marks the Course out as different from other paths, it's interesting, to consider what you might pick. Let's see what the Course itself says. This is in that famous section, I Need Do Nothing. It says, a holy relationship, which, as we've seen, is about an actual joining between two people, is a means of saving time on our journey to God. One instant spent together, and that means you and that other person, restores the universe to both of you. We could even say one instant spent together restores the kingdom to both of you. This is the special means this Course is using to save you time. How interesting. We all want to get home faster. We all want to get to God faster. So if we're trying to save time on that journey, what is this Course's special way of speeding us there, of saving us time? It's joining with someone else. Okay, I'm going to stop my screen share for now. If you think about it, are we going to be separate on Earth, truly close to no one, basically alone, so that our visceral experience is separateness? And then one day we're just going to slip into perfect oneness in heaven? I don't think so. I think we're going to need to experience oneness on Earth first. Maybe you think that if you just get really good at the internal realization of oneness, what you might call vertical oneness, that's good enough, right? You go from experiencing vertical oneness on Earth, and then one day you're just experiencing that forever in heaven. However, my experience and your experience may be similar, is that people who are really good at vertical oneness, which the course highly prizes, are not any better at interpersonal joining. It's almost like they're separate skills. Okay. We've all probably known people who have this knack for that experience of vertical oneness. Are they actually better at joining with others? In my experience, no. They tend to display the same egoic patterns in relationships the rest of us do. And there's a great story about this from it's about Buddhist meditation teacher Jack Kornfield. I'm sure many of you know about Jack Kornfield. The story makes this exact point. So as a young man, Kornfield went off for a lengthy meditation retreat, I think for like 3 years in the Far East under different meditation masters, and became quite advanced in meditation. Yet, despite his experiences, profound experiences of bliss and awakening in various monasteries, when he returned to New York City and began entering back into relationships, he was shocked to discover that his patterns in those relationships were exactly the same as before. His relationships were just as troubled as they had been before he left. So he said, quote, I was emotionally immature and all the old struggles with family and friends came right back. What's more, he found that he couldn't work through his emotional maturity alone. He said, quote, I need the connection with another human being, or I needed the connection with another human being in therapy. Isn't that interesting? Let's face it, joining is not easy. How many broken relationships do we all have lying behind us in the road? How many relationships started out full of promise and joining only to descend into conflict and bitterness? We're convinced it's mainly their fault, right? They're convinced it's mainly our fault. And then we just go on to the next relationship and repeat the cycle. And so do they. I don't think we course students are all that good at joining, to be honest. That's my experience, at least. I suspect, too, that's part of why we don't want to emphasize that the course is all about joining between two people. Why make the course about something that we're bad at, something that seems impossible to attain? After all, the two people who brought this path into the world, they didn't attain it. Helen and Bill famously didn't end up with a deep, harmonious joining. In fact, they ended up with something very different. And of course, it's not just course students, it's human beings in general. People are not good at joining. Learning how to join, therefore, is truly a lifelong pursuit. Learning how to get along, learning how to cooperate, how to play well with others, it takes a lifetime. It probably takes a lot more than that. It's one of the hardest things that there is to learn. Now, as I've said, joining is already hard, but I think there are ways that we understand and practice A Course in Miracles that tend to make it harder. I want to talk some about that. Okay. Talk about three things. The first thing is that the way we see and practice the Course can often turn us in on ourselves. Okay. Where we become intensely focused on our own minds, our own emotional state, the state of our own consciousness. And as we're so fixated on our all important mind, it can easily turn us into monologuers. Now, I've just looked this up, and the actual term is monologists. Sounds a bit more refined, but you know what I'm getting at, someone who monologues all the time. We probably all know spiritual people who are monologists. But one thing is sure, monologuing and joining do not go together. We all know that. Another thing that gets in the way of joining, and this is not so much about our Course in Miracles attitudes that kind of leaks into the Course. It's more about attitudes we soak up from self-help, from therapy, from spirituality in general, from the culture in general these days. But let me put it in the words of David Brooks. He's a columnist, among other things, for the New York Times, and came across this column of his just recently. So I cannot resist reading this to you. Okay, so it was from a post of his called "The Wrong Definition of Love" by David Brooks. And here's what he said: when I look at the self-help bestsellers of our day, they are not generally about how to pour out service. They are more often about how to protect yourself from other people. The general theme is don't let other people get you down. Then he goes into a couple examples. I won't go into those. This graphic, by the way, is meant to be a guy with a boundary around him. So we all know about drawing our boundaries these days. I think Brooks has really captured it here. This attitude that our mental health lies in protecting ourselves from others, drawing our boundaries, figuring out if the person we're dating is truly a narcissist, making sure those people don't traumatize us again. But if my attitude says that my mental health and my equilibrium is all about protecting myself from you, how does that facilitate joining? Finally, one of the main anti joining ways in which we understand A Course in Miracles, and I'll spend some time on this because this, I think, is very important, is that we as Course students are often unsure that other people are even really there, that other people are actually real. We often say to each other, there's nobody out there, or there is no other. We may suspect that since the whole world's an illusion, then other people maybe are too, must be. We may suspect that people are just our projections. We talk about how did I project the war in that other country as if everyone in that other country is just my projection, or that other people are just our mirrors. One of the men in our community at the Circle of Atonement who leads a study group, he recently said in a meeting for study group support, he said that in every single meeting of his study group, he has to remind his group members that other people are real. Okay, so you may not hold this view or even, a halfway version of this view, but it's very common. So let me digress for just a couple of minutes and talk about this issue. First of all, go back to my slides here. The Course is consistently clear that other people are real. There are many statements that just come out and say it. So to not bury you in quotes, I just got two of them here, but you can see what I mean. The first one says, your holy brother, sight of whom is your release, is no illusion. The next one says, ask the Holy Spirit, to learn of the reality of your brother. And I could just pile on so many quotes here. The Course is consistently clear. Those people out there, their bodies aren't real, but they are real. The minds in those bodies, the sons of God in those bodies, or at least who think they're in those bodies, they're real. This is how the Course talks on page after page. What I've been wanting to say to people recently is just open your book and look at a page. So, couple things I want to point out here. First of all, there are roughly 200 references to others. Like we so often say, there is no other. Why does the Course have 200 references to others? And we could multiply that: brothers, minds, sons. The other thing is, you literally can just open the book at random and see how the Course talks about others. Okay. So just to test this out this morning while I'm preparing my notes, I did this. I grabbed the book, opened it completely at random, decided I was going to look at the left hand page. And here's what I found on that left facing page. Okay. I won't belabor this, but you'll see what I'm talking about. This paragraph says, "You cannot triumph, but you are exalted. And in your exalted state, you seek others, others like you, and rejoice with them. It is easy to distinguish grandeur from grandiosity simply because love is returned, but pride is not. Returned by who? Returned by those others. Pride will not produce miracles and therefore will deprive you of the true witnesses to your reality. Who are those witnesses, do you think? It'll be very clear as we go on. Truth is not obscure nor hidden, but its obviousness to you lies in the joy you bring to its witnesses. So the witnesses are something you can bring joy to. They sound like others who show it to you. So you're bringing joy to them, truth. You're bringing, sorry, joy to them by bringing truth to them. And then they are showing it back to you. They're showing you your reality in this case. So they're obviously the others. They attest to your grandeur, but they cannot attest to pride because pride is not shared. This is how, on page after page after page after page, to the point where you can open at random and see something like this, the Course talks about us and others. They're there, the others are out there, and there's an interaction, right? If we're prideful, they're not going to return what we give them. Okay. If we give them love, that will bring them joy. And then they will become the witness who shows us our own reality. There's an interaction going on because we're real and they're real. Okay. So we've talked about, I guess what I want to say here is that it's kind of obvious and simple, but if you don't think anyone's out there, how does that facilitate joining? There's no one to join with. Speaking about joining suddenly becomes a sign that, like, you don't get it. You're a newbie, right? You don't get the deeper truth. Okay. So I've talked about three things here. Here we are. These three attitudes inevitably get in the way of joining. It's all about my mind. So why not just monologue all the time? My mental health is about protecting myself from you. And you're probably not really there. These are very common attitudes in Course in Miracles circles, some of them just in spiritual self-help circles in general, that obviously inevitably get in the way of joining. Okay. And this is not just a kind of theoretical possibility that maybe the way we see the Course can lead to people who maybe are worse at joining than when they started. It's not just a theoretical possibility. There's an article that is unforgettable. It was written, I think, in the very late 90s by Hugh Prather. Hugh Prather was a Course in Miracles teacher and author, but he also was a very famous author in his own right. When I was growing up, my mom had a book of his poems on our coffee table. This was before the Course existed. That was a monster bestseller. I think it was called Notes on Myself, Notes to Myself. Anyway, he wrote an article called "What is the Course? Will it exist in the 21st century?" So it was written shortly before the 21st century. And here's what he says: sobering words that are hard to forget. He said, "A few years ago, I attended a gathering where I saw many of the people associated with the course that Gail, his wife, and I had gotten to know in the 70s. Okay. What effect does long term study of such a teaching have on its students? I was surprised that after 20 years, it was the opposite of what I expected. With two or three exceptions, everyone I saw at the gathering was far more separate and egocentric than they were when Gail and I first met them. Far more separate and egocentric. In fact, their egos were so large that many of them had lost the ability to carry on a simple conversation. They made pronouncements and listened deeply to no one. Obviously, just making pronouncements and listening deeply to no one leaves you unable to carry on a simple conversation. So it is possible, and I don't think Hugh's experience is unique to him. It's possible to study and practice the course in such a way that you end up less able to join. Okay, so let's get to my main topic here, which is how do we join? There's so much that could be said about this. There's so much I would love to talk about over days. It's something you learn over a lifetime. But I want to keep it really simple for today. Obviously, we have so many speakers, and am I right? 6 musicians that where our minds are taking in an enormous amount over this time. So you probably have not a great chance of remembering anything, I will say, but in the slim hope that you might, I'm going to reduce it down to 2 points. Okay. And I'm hoping you might remember these 2 points. How do we join? Number one, focus on your own ego, not theirs. Number two, perhaps more controversially, be other oriented. So let's talk about both of those things. First of all, focus on your own ego, not theirs. Now, you know exactly what I mean by this, I'm sure. The vast majority of our focus in our relationships tends to be on their ego, right? We are alert to their errors. The course talks about this, just watching for them to screw up yet again. We remember their errors from the past. We hold on to a whole list of those errors. We are convinced that if they cleaned up their side of the street, the two of us could live in endless bliss. And it would be so easy for them to just fix their stuff, right? We could tell them so plainly how to do it. And we try, and we try, and we try. I feel like there's some rock song here. We don't get no satisfaction, right? They just don't listen. And I want to play you a clip. This is from comedian Bill Burr. And if you know about Bill Burr, he's kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. He's hilarious. He doesn't always say the nicest or the most correct things, but I was joking with my wife Emily this morning that if you do remember anything I say, it might just be this clip. So let me see. Share sound and okay. I'm really hoping you can hear. Otherwise, it's pointless. So I hope you can hear the sound here. So let me just go ahead.
Learned anything in 5 years of being married is we're always working on me. You know? Evidently, my wife is this completed work under museum glass that is to be admired and studied. Like, how did she do that? And I'm like one of these guys, you know those buildings that just has scaffolding around it for like 6 straight years? So you're like, are they ever going to finish that thing? Is that some sort of insurance job? Jesus Christ, what a piece of shit. You just tear it down, start over again.
Okay. So it was a bit faint for my sound. Could you hear it in the room? I'm not getting vigorous nods. I'm not. So what I'm going to do, okay, well, there, thank you. I'm getting the vigorous nods I was hoping for. Yeah. So we can all relate, right? Right? It's like we would love to put all the focus on the other person and what they need to change, uh, and treat ourselves as if we are the one under the museum glass, that finished, completed piece of art. But the obvious question is, what about our own ego? How much time do we spend thinking about or talking about what our own ego injects into the relationship, how it shows up, what a factor it has been in the past of the relationship, how simple it would be to change it? And it's true, we're not the only one with an ego here, right? They've got one too. And it has an effect. And their inability to face their ego in the extreme might make the relationship unworkable so that we have to move on. That's all true. But there are a couple relevant questions here. First, how successful have you been at getting someone to face their ego and change? I will tell you that I have been a singular failure in this department. I wouldn't say I've had no success, but I think my success rate's been at about 2% of what I've tried for. Okay. My point is that changing someone else just doesn't work. It's not a practical way to heal a relationship and bring about joining. Second, however much their ego is present and is having an effect, isn't your responsibility your own ego? And isn't your ego what you are able to directly change because it's yours? So, this is where our attention needs to be. It needs to be on our judgments and letting those go, on what we are carrying and holding on to from the past and forgiving that, on our defensiveness, a huge factor in relationships, and relaxing that. It needs to be on our anger, our blame, our criticism, our prioritizing of our needs. Chances are we don't even really know what our ego is injecting into the relationship. I mean, sure, we have some ideas, but in my experience, some of the core things we do that prevent joining are probably completely outside our awareness. If you shifted your focus onto your own ego, taking responsibility for it, using the tools that you have from the course to let it go, what do you think would happen in your relationships? If you showed up with less ego, your relationships would be transformed. If no one can get along with you, it's not because you are so enlightened. It's because you are in denial about your ego. There are so many fixes out there in the world for relationships. But what I always want to hear from people who are oftentimes giving really good counsel about relationships, what I always want to hear is some recognition about the ego, that thing that we're all carrying inside that's driving us. That's what's messing things up. And therefore, the only path to true joining is wearing away our own ego. If that's what we spend our time doing, then we will know true joining. People will show up in our lives who are willing to join. We may discover that they're already sitting next to us on the couch, and we will learn how to join with them. Okay, so number one was focus on your own ego, not theirs. Number two is be other oriented. We are so focused, as I was saying earlier, these days on protecting ourselves from others, making sure they don't take advantage of us, making sure we don't give too much or love too much. And all of that, in my view, has rather, I think, predictably reinforced the egocentrism that is the basic nature of the ego. The ego is egocentric, and the ego is what's killing our relationships. If we want to join, therefore, we need to go in the other direction. If being ego centered is the problem, then being other centered is the solution. It sounds a bit like blasphemy as I say it, even. It seems like you aren't supposed to say those kind of things these days. But in my experience, it is the best thing you can do if you want to join. So I want to talk a bit about ways of being other oriented or other centered. Okay. So, really partial list here, but I like it. It's eye-opening. And a lot of these things are pulled directly from the course. I've not included the quotes except in one case just because I want to keep it short. But for a lot of these things, there are direct statements in the course about. Okay. So, ways of being other oriented, acts of kindness, looking for opportunities to do acts of kindness for the people we're with, we live with, people in our lives. Next one, really listening to them so they feel heard and seen. I think all of us can use a lot of improvement in our listening skills. Tuning into them. How are they feeling? What do they need? How much do we monitor, what the person we're either living with or currently communicating with, monitoring what they're feeling? What are they needing? Focusing on and praising their good efforts. The course thinks we have a problem with this, that we tend to overlook their good efforts. We should focus on them and let the person know that we appreciate those good efforts. Overlooking their mistakes and helping them to take their mistakes less seriously. The course thinks we got a problem here too, that we focus on their mistakes and enlarge them and make them real. That's the concept of making error real, making the errors of others seem real to us and to them. Prioritizing those people over physical things like food and phone. I mean, a lot of physical things, but I thought it'd be a nice alliteration to say food and phone. We prioritize so often the physical things, not the people. Expressing gratitude for all they give to us. Celebrating their gains as our own, their spiritual gains, anything that they feel like is a gain. Do we celebrate all of their gains as if those gains were ours? And finally, consistent courtesy, even in very little things. Courtesy is an other-oriented thing, right? It's about the other. And Jesus talks about, this is a quote, consistent courtesy, even in very little things. And then last on the list, and biggest thing on the list, is most of all, practice the awareness of who they really are. The Course says they have inestimable worth, worth so great it can't be calculated. It says they are our perfect equals, not kind of equal, perfectly equal. It says they are holy. Before your brother's holiness, the world is still. It's like a hush falls over the entire world if it could see their holiness. It says the light of who they are is far more brilliant than is any light that I have ever looked upon, which means far brighter than the sun. Finally, the Course says, if you saw them for who they are, you could scarce refrain from kneeling at their feet. It would be hard to hold yourself back from kneeling at their feet. And the Course, all throughout the workbook, in many places in the text, instructs us to practice this awareness, the awareness of who other people really are. In fact, in my view, it would take a long time to back this up, but I'll just tell you that in my view, the course's central theme, the central theme of the course, is seeing, honoring, loving, serving, blessing, and giving to the reality of others. So, yes to everything on this list, and especially yes to practicing the awareness of who they are. And if we did these two things I've been talking about, if we focused on our ego, not theirs, if we were other oriented, we would know true joining. One of my favorite passages about joining in the course is this one from the manual. It says, the demarcations they have drawn between their roles, their minds, their bodies, their needs, their interests, and all the differences they thought separated them from one another fade and grow dim and disappear. Fade and grow dim and disappear. Just imagine experiencing that level of joining. Imagine in a relationship, the demarcations between your minds fade and grow dim and disappear. Imagine the demarcations between your needs fade and grow dim and disappear. Imagine the demarcations between your bodies fade and grow dim and disappear. That is the kind of closeness we all long for. Imagine experiencing that, knowing that depth of joining. And if we did, what would happen? We would remember the kingdom. All right, thank you. Okay, well, we have some time for Q&A. I've got a partner sharing. It's going to take us a while, so I don't know quite which one to do first. Maybe have some Q&A first for a little bit, and then do the partner sharing. But let's launch in. I'm not quite sure how the Q&A will work we have two audiences, one remote and one live, but I'm sure Andreas can guide us here.
Well, I think everyone can kind of participate. And whoever wants to ask a question, just raise your hand, either here in person in the room or on Zoom, and we'll do our best to make it all happen.
So Andreas, is a mic going to get passed around in the room?
Yes, it will be passed around.
Great. Okay. I guess that's kind of obvious, but great. Okay. Well, I see a question or a comment from Jared.
We've got someone here.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, Rob. Oh, okay. To the front. Oh, wow. The pressure's on. Lovely to be with you, Robert. I have a question.
I see you. And I hear you.
Oh, both.
I can hold for you. You can talk.
Okay. This is based on experience. Sometimes I get the sense from wealthy people that they don't want to join with you or with me because there is a sense of inequality. Again, there's an idea like, oh, is this my projection? Or how do I join with someone who doesn't really want to join with me? How to reconcile that within my own consciousness? Sometimes there's a sense of shame I get from them. I mean, we're talking maybe a little Downton Abbey here, traditions of servant.
They're all so nice
master.
in Downton Abbey.
What?
They're all so nice in Downton Abbey.
Exactly.
They love the people downstairs.
I mean, I think that happened occasionally, yes. We have to acknowledge that. But there were other households. Oh, there were other households that didn't treat their servants so nicely. Let's admit that. Um, uh, and wealth has had a tremendous momentary in the evolution of humankind. I think it's a cultural thing that's all over the world, and we have to admit um, the the reality of that, or the momentary reality of that,
Yeah,
on an individual and cultural basis,
I think I
societal
get where you're going.
basis.
Yeah, I think I get the question.
Okay.
Um, and I'm getting a lot of echo, by the way, right now. I don't know why. But what I'll say is, wow, a lot of echo. Um, what I'll say is a couple of things. First of all, people have a hard time joining. People, everybody. Okay. One of the main things that keeps us from joining is what the course calls specialness. And specialness is, I think I'm better than you. Okay. We want to make it a little different than that. We want to say, well, I think I'm better or worse. I've taught a million classes on specialness, and everyone always adds or worse. But that's not what the course is talking about. It's talking about the belief in being better than. And that's why we're all so absolutely focused on climbing up some kind of social ladder so that we have a higher ranking, because that's social proof that we're better. All that's true. Okay. So people who think we're better than we are don't want to join with us. Um, People who just are people that don't want to join, not really. And yet, I don't mean to be critical here, but I do appreciate that you have really nicely illustrated my first point, which was focus on your ego, not theirs. Right. So people might think we were in collusion here, that we agreed upon this beforehand, just so you could so well illustrate my point. But in fact, we are not. Um, we have to attend to our own unwillingness to join. And it's living in all of us. And that's where the focus should be. Yeah. Thank you.
Is camera okay? Reinhard? Maxi, do you want to look into it?
Both of them. Both. Okay. Hey, Robert.
Hi.
So, firstly, thank you for just saying others are real, because this has been like burning my head out in so much confusion. And, when you're just saying about just pour love in, just be other orientated, what do they need? How can we help? Then the idea comes in my mind of this idea that I've got since starting the course, that I could be then feeding into the ego sometimes, and maybe always not doing what I think that they could do within that moment. So could you talk a little bit on that, so I'm clear? Or is it just that literally just pouring in, like without me even worrying or thinking that I'm not being helpful when I'm trying to be loving? I suppose my concern in my mind is I'm not helping the situation sometimes by being, yeah, I suppose I don't even know how to put this into words. Like there's a thing of being too loving and it's not helpful, which sounds mad when I say it. But yeah, is there
Yeah.
like something to look out for, or is it just pouring fully? Don't worry about the ideas in my mind of it being right or wrong. Just give.
Really interesting question. I do think we've all been taught these days to be really careful because we're probably giving too much, right? Watch out, have some boundaries, people. We've all been taught that. And it's true, there's a germ of truth there, because in fact, we can give in unhelpful ways. We can impose our idea of what someone needs onto them. And we can give when they aren't open. And the Course does talk about these things. Its solution is to ask for guidance first. Because the Holy Spirit knows better than we do what they need or if they can receive from us right now. Another issue is the Course is very focused on what it calls at one point giving to get, where I'm giving to you, but it's really a way of obligating you, subtly make you feel guilty until you can reciprocate. And then your guilt goes away. Right. And so we have to be honest with ourselves about, are we engaging in that strings attached kind of giving so that we obligate them and then we're saving up, future favors from them. However, from the Course's standpoint, we need to unleash our giving, not hold it back with tons of cautions. We need to become givers, not givers in those senses I talked about, where we're giving in it's not a very helpful way, or we're giving just to obligate them, but true givers. The Course, one of its most repeated principles, and the main principle that it says that it repeats. So there's not a lot of places where the Course says, we've said this thing many times. The main place where it does that is in relation to giving, that we need to learn that it's only through giving that we truly receive. It's through giving that we find our salvation. Yeah, you get it. I see you closing your eyes. So I think, yes, the cautions, but mostly unleash it, because that's the way to God. Oh, I lost your sound. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Go ahead.
Is that better?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Yeah. That there's a doubt in my mind of, and I suppose this is just something I'm working with at the moment, to just be able to differentiate between guidance and not helpful guidance. So yeah, maybe this is just something I'm just going to have to allow to unfold in the moment. But yeah, seeing them as others is definitely helpful. And as well, when you were talking, it reminded me, it's like, it's just what would be helpful overall to just be truly giving, because we are only giving to ourselves. So yeah, I think the doubt in my mind is just knowing when it's truly helpful.
Well, what I'll say is that if there's someone who has a need, it's a lot of us feel that we are very bad at getting guidance. We don't hear anything. But there's something about a situation where someone's in need. If we ask in those situations, I find that our hearing tends to be better than usual. We will often get a very immediate and often surprisingly concrete sense of what, in fact, we should do to be of help. So in the abstract, it may be like, well, I hear anything. I think when you're in that experience and you do ask, you might be surprised at how well you hear and at how accurate what you hear turns out to be.
Feels good. Feels good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So let's take one more question, and then I want to do the partner sharing. Okay. So, Andreas, I'll let you.
Is there a Zoom question? A question on Zoom? Hang on. Just want to make sure we include the guys on Zoom.
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, Gerhard, can you mute yourself? Gerhard, kannst du dich freischalten?
Yes.
I can hear Gerhard.
Okay. I can't see myself, so I don't know what you say.
Yeah,
anyway,
we saw you for a second there.
Okay, I just was wondering, Robert, did we met at Wuster-Witz one day, long time ago? Have you been in Wuster-Witz in Germany?
I haven't been to Germany.
Oh,
so
okay. Thank you.
So unlikely.
Okay, thank you for your teaching. That was always my point, that we can let's say experience ourselves by giving things away. You know, otherwise we have to protect ourselves, and on the other hand, we have to. It is a great pleasure to give things away and sharing with other people. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. There's a lot of social science these days on the fact that we get more happiness from giving things, from being giving, than from pouring attention on ourselves. And our expectation is entirely different. It's the opposite. But the actual data says that we are made happier through giving. So we should stop being so cautious and afraid about giving. Okay. So was there one more, Andreas, or shall I go into the partner sharing?
Yeah, there's one more, Michelle.
Okay.
You want to go to the front so Robert can see you?
Hi, Robert. Hi, hi.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
I heard something yesterday from Keith Kavanagh. And it stayed, and I was wondering about your experience around this. And he said, yes, so you have to accept when you know that when you know yourself, you know your brother. And I think I've struggled with that, like, you know, the whole accepting the atonement for yourself, and then everybody's healed with you. That kind of concept. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I think it does go that way. If you know yourself, then since you are the same as them, you know them as well. But let's talk about the other way, right? Which is if you know them, then you come to know yourself. There's that famous section in the text called the Holy Encounter that says, as you see him, you will see yourself. As you treat him, you will treat yourself. As you think of him, you will think of yourself. So the causation goes the other way as well. And in the Course, the idea of accepting the atonement for yourself, I think, is widely misunderstood. If you look at the actual passage and the many references later on in the Course to that passage, what that means is I accept healing into my own mind so that I can give it. It's not I come to know myself. It's I accept right-mindedness, miracle-mindedness, so that I can be a miracle worker. The sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept the atonement for himself. So I accept healing into my mind so that I can give miracles to others. And in that process, I come to know myself. So yes, if we know ourselves, of course, we know everybody at the same time, but it goes the other way too. And I would say that the main focus in the Course is on that other direction. You know, knowing them, joining with them, and thereby discovering who I really am.
That's nice. That's good. That's nice. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Shake.
Okay, so why don't we do, if that's okay, Andreas, do the partner sharing now? I know that a lot of you online may not have anybody to share with, so that's too bad. If you have somebody, grab them. But here's the partner sharing. It involves a slide. It's very simple. So first of all, please go ahead and pair up.
Okay. Robert, we can do a breakout session so the Zoom guys can do a partner sharing as well.
Great. That's great. Okay. So let's see here. Let me get my slide advanced. See? Something went wrong. Okay, while everyone's pairing up, let me get my slides sorted out. Okay. So here's the partner sharing. Just hopefully you all can pair off, and the breakout rooms for those joining on Zoom, hopefully that'll all work as well. But I'd like you to take 5 minutes each. So 5 minutes, one person's talking, the other person's just being a good listener, and then we'll switch it over. I'll put a timer here so that I'll keep time. And the basic idea is looking over that list of being other oriented and asking, where can I improve? And I'll keep this list up on the screen for you. Where can I improve? Looking through these guys. And what would happen in the relationship if I did improve in that way? So let's say I thought, I think my main issue is consistent courtesy, even in very little things. And if I improved in that area, in my main relationship and my relationships in general, what would happen in the relationship? Would there be more joining? Okay. So hopefully you've all been able to pair off, at least all who want to. And again, decide who's going to go first. That person talks for 5 minutes. Where can I improve? What would happen if I did? Other person listens, and then we'll switch it over. Okay. So go ahead and start. Got about 5 minutes here. So I would love to hear, I'm going to ask for a particular kind of sharing. And that is, I would love to hear if you had a real aha in going through this partner sharing that might benefit others to hear. Like a light bulb that went off in your own mind that maybe could cause a few light bulbs to go off in the rest of our minds. So anybody want to go ahead and share about an aha moment like that from the partner sharing? See, Andreas is handy with the mic.
So there was a split second during our 5 minute conversation just there. And it's something I've seen on other occasions as well, that there can be just the tiniest split second decision in my mind where I don't want to listen to this anymore. Okay, I've been listening. I want to do something else. I just have a split second thought that goes through my mind, and it's as if I transmit it outwards, because I then see a reflection of that thought coming back to me, and the conversation changes direction. I've saw the same thing. A really good example of it was a few months ago. I was coming out of an event, and someone who else had been at the event, we were having a chat, having a quick talk as we were walking out of the event, and I made that split second decision and then covered it over and carried on. But then I saw actually that thought had had an effect on that other person. I thought, okay, I caught that in the act. I caught that in the moment. I didn't let it get covered over by time. And so I took it back and I addressed it there and then. And actually that conversation after that encounter, after that, it was fine. But if I hadn't addressed it in that moment, then we would have gone our separate ways with that moment having been left unhealed. And so the fact that in that split second, I hadn't been sedating myself, so that helps. But so I actually caught that moment before I covered it over. I realized it had happened and I was able to address it. And so I was just mentioning, because the same thing happened just now, that the time was going on and I hadn't spoken. I thought, so I had a little grievance about it. And then I saw that change briefly, and then then it got carried over, it got melded over by time, and it was gone. So I was just mentioning that a self-awareness of these tiny little things. You feel it in your belly. It's like a little something switches, something turns over, and then you look outside and you see that change outside. And it's just an opportunity to address it before there's a divergence, kind of thing.
All right. Thank you. Okay. And maybe just one more person, some kind of aha that you had. I'd love to hear if you had any things on that list that really stood out to you for as personally relevant.
Yeah, my one on the list was gratitude. Stood out to me, and I mean this is very obvious. I knew this conceptually, but to give gratitude is to receive it at the same time. As soon as I felt it leave my heart, be given from my heart, it was given back to me immediately. And that was very enjoyable. So thank you.
Yeah. That's a good one. I mean, we often have people in our lives who really have contributed to our lives in the most, major ways, who we kind of take for granted. We just expect the giving to go on and on. Okay, well, I feel like we should go ahead and close it off. I know at these things it's very difficult to keep to the schedule. So I think I will go ahead. I see there are a couple comments in the Zoom, but I'll go ahead and leave it there. Thank you so very much for being here with me in exploring this topic. Thank you so much to Andreas for having me here. It's been an honor. I hope that you are able to take something away that helps you with joining, because again, it is how we get home. So I'll go ahead and let you move on with the rest of the weekend, but thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Robert. It's been a pleasure, and I'm sure we won't just have a takeaway, but yeah, we all benefited from your way of illuminating the understanding of
Thank you, Robert.
through joining. Thank you so much for that, and a beautiful day to you. Big round of applause for you. And yeah.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you all. All right. Bye-bye.